Well, hello everyone. Everybody having a good day today? Welcome to what day is it today? Thursday, the fourth day of the fourth week of the free web development bootcamp. Can you all believe it's been almost a month that we've been doing this? It's incredible. It has been such a joy to be able to learn and teach alongside all of you. And yeah, hope you're all doing well. We're going to be doing some CSS grid, but before, hey learner, good to see you. But before we hop in, let's just get some links going. Did you all catch the incredible guest session we had yesterday with Miguel, who taught us about DevTools? Don't worry, I got you covered. So there's the YouTube channel, youtube.com/@badwebsiteclub. If you want to join the conversation and discuss your solutions and projects or any questions you might have, join us on Discord. There's the Discord channel invite. And we've got our schedule up. So that's this one here, Bad Website Club, Web Dev Bootcamp 2023. And finally, if you're attending, you're probably all sick of me saying this, we have a code of conduct. We expect everybody to abide by this. So please have a look, bit.ly/BWC-COC. Yeah. Oh, dear, to spend the last hour or so finishing the previous project. Now my back is aching, but I don't want to miss you, so I'm here. It's really a joy for me too. Don't overextend yourself. Remember, this is all self-paced, like it all stays recorded, so take it easy as well, please. It's gone by so fast. Yeah, right? It's been such a joy, but it has gone pretty fast. Would miss the bootcamp. Learner, you are too kind. Hopefully we'll be back soon again. But that's enough of me blabbling, huh? I'd love to hear in the chat also how the projects are going for you, how the bootcamp's going for you. So please, this is live for a reason so that we can do stuff together. However, in the meantime, let's talk about what we're going to be doing today and tomorrow. So this is another two-parter where we're going to be learning CSS grid, which is a mechanism for doing layouts of rows and columns, which is going to sound familiar, but we'll get into some misconceptions and differences soon. So yeah, we're going to be building a magazine article, and we'll be using CSS grid, including concepts like grid rows and grid columns. And friends, I'm going to do something a little bit different today because I'm going to start right from the beginning. So cool. Here's a preview of what we're going to be doing. Free Code Camp. And, look at this beautiful layout. We're going to be using CSS grid to achieve these sort of side-by-side and on top of each other layout options to make this look pretty cool. But I want to start, in familiar ground. So let's get right into it. We'll add our doc type, HTML. We're going to have our HTML element. And the reason I'm doing this is because actually we're going to be getting into new stuff from step 2 already. So there's lots to cover. So there's our head and our body, as we've done a good couple times already. Next, we're going to have our meta tag with a char set to be UTF-8. And a meta tag for mobile responsiveness within the head element, which I do not remember how to do. But I'm going to cheat a little bit, check my code. Oh, hold on. A couple things I'm missing. So we forgot our lang attribute in the HTML. Should have 2 meta elements. I don't remember quite how the viewport thing goes. So I'm going to go with meta viewport. And it's probably going to be like, hey, there it is. Thank you. Should have a name set to viewport. Name set to viewport. If I didn't have Free Code Camp helping me with this, I probably would have used documentation. Because let me tell you, friend, I never look at Learner. Learner knows about it. I do not. I always say, we don't need to memorize things as programmers, because if we needed to memorize things, or if we could memorize this sort of thing, well, then we wouldn't have documentation, would we? Width equals divide width, initial scale set to 1. Is that good? That is good. We will pat ourselves on the back. Pat, pat. Thank you for your help, everyone. We'll move right on. to our next challenge. And this is why I wanted to go straight in, because look, we're adding Google Fonts and Font Awesome. So first things first, we'll use our title, magazine. Then we will have a link element for CSS. And notice it says CSS here in the Google Fonts link. So that's going to be a rel of CSS. And href is going to be set to, and I'm going to leave that blank for a second because we actually want 3 link tags. So I might be lazy. Paste. And now I'm just going to copy and paste these URLs in there. So first there's the Google font. Then actually there's 3 Google fonts: Anton, Baskerville, and Railway. So we got a lot of fonts coming in. Then there's the Font Awesome font. If you don't recall Font Awesome from a previous lesson, we used that for having cool icons, which kind of behave like fonts, hence the name. Cool, so that's font, the Google font, the Font Awesome, and our CSS itself. Rel equals style sheet. Oops, thank you, learner. Ew, that's embarrassing. Style sheet, my bad. Thanks, style. Thanks, learner. Great, pat. Let's keep going. Okay, now we're going to start writing our HTML. We'll have a main element. And we will have, in that element, we'll have a section with a class set to heading. Now, whoops. There we go. I accidentally hid my windows. By the way, friends, in case you're wondering, that the reason I keep having these little difficulties typing is because just before this boot camp, I built myself a keyboard and I'm not used to the layout yet. So I keep making mistakes. Great. Now, we don't have any content yet because we've just declared our semantic elements, but with no content in them. Check our code. Pat. Let's keep moving. So within our heading, did I build a keyboard from scratch? From parts. I bought a kit and then I built it from parts. Within your heading element, create a header element with the class set to hero. So header with a class set to be hero. Now, hero is a very, very ceremonious name for a class. It's a fun hobby, learner. It's a very ceremonial name for a class, and it's actually used, or at least was in the 2010s, quite commonly used. So what's going on here is that we're saying, hey, this is where the sort of like presentation of myself comes in. So if you have like a header of a website that's for you, usually the part where it says like, hi, my name is Geraldine, this hero section is where you would have this sort of introduction and a photo and some call to action links, as they call them, to get in touch or something like this. Great. So we are going to have, in that element, we're going to have an image with a source set to be this. Which is quite large. The alt text, remember we need alt text, is going to be free CodeCamp logo. And the class of this image is going to set to be hero img. And you might notice, oh, there's that word hero again. See some saying, are heroes headers not in style so much anymore? Oh no, I just frankly haven't seen one in a while, but it's probable that they still are. So I'm just sort of covering my bases in case it's not used as much anymore. The web moves pretty fast. So it's definitely possible that they're still used, and I made a mistake. Oh, great. So now we're going to set the loading attribute of an image element can be set to lazy. What we're doing this for is to, when loading our website, not have it wait to load the image, because images can be quite chunky, especially one of this size. Not to fetch an image until it is needed. I'll show you what I mean in just a moment. As in when the user scrolls the image into view. As an additional benefit, lazy loaded elements will not load until the non-lazy elements are loaded. This means users with slow internet connections can view the content of your page without having to wait for images to load. So I'd love to take a small detour and explore what this means. First of all, let's take a look at the size of this. If you look at the name of the file, 1920 by 1080, that's actually the resolution or the dimensions of the image. It's quite large. And we can actually find out how large it is using our dev tools. So if I go into inspect, oh my goodness, this is quite large. Let me hide my HTML for just a second. So there's our image. Let's bring in our dev tools. Thank you very much. And let me inspect that once again. So there's our image. Now check it out. Right now it says here that the file size is 19.2 kilobytes. Now, CSS says, if we have time, can we talk about what they mean by fetching the image? Does that mean sending it from the server to the client? Great question. I'm actually going to cover this as well. So thank you very much, Cesium. So this image is 19.2 kilobytes, which doesn't sound like a lot. But think about it. 1 megabyte is about 1,000 kilobytes, 1,024 kilobytes. So that means we'd have to load this image about 100 times or navigate from this to another website where it has a similar but not the same image about 100 times. And that eventually starts to add up. And again, a megabyte doesn't sound like a lot. But if you've ever been traveling and you've got your connection, you're only, I think you pay like, at least in Europe, you pay something like €1.50 for every megabyte or something like that if you're traveling. That's a lot of money. So this is why we do things like not load images unless we need them. But what does loading mean? Let me take a quick look at this network tab that I'd love to explore with all of you. This is side content, more if we're interested, but I still think it's interesting to check out. Now you'll see that a lot of stuff is being loaded here. And these sort of illustrate what the different files that we're loading aside from the HTML are. We've got our CSS files. There's our custom CSSs that we were loading. But what I would, did I lose my image? I lost my image. Oh, no. Whoopsie daisy. That's not good. Image, src equals, let me just bring in this free code camp thing. It's a little bit more advanced than what we're meant to be doing, but I still think it's a good idea to take a look at it real quick. So you can see here our network is doing all of these connections to the free code camp server or other servers to fetch things that we need or to download. What our browser is doing is saying, hey, I've got an address here for an asset, and an asset can be an image, it can be some CSS, it can be a font, it can be some JavaScript. Can I have that, please? And then the server where that address is corresponding to will say, give me a sec, here you go. So I've gone, for example, to this free code camp web address, gotten this image, and we can see if I scroll down real quick, the size of it. I think we saw it before anyway. Response initiator. Here we go. It took 0.14 milliseconds, which doesn't sound like a lot, but if you've got lots and lots of images, this can add up. Okay, so let's jump back to our free code camp exercise real quick. So we've got our image. We've told it to have an alt text, free code camp logo, and the class is set to hero. Is it IMG? IMG. So if for some reason, this image is going to only show up lower down the page, so it doesn't need to be shown the moment that we load our website, we can tell the browser, hey, we don't need it right away, so load it lazily. That is, only load it when it comes into view. This way, opening, let's say you have an article, right? And the most essential part of that article is going to be the text. You don't want to slow down the experience for your users by having lots of images and assets that block the loading of the website, because that's a lot of data. So only load them lazily. What this also does, and you've probably noticed this with some websites, and I think Miguel covered it yesterday as well. When you load some websites, you might notice that the font is different for just a couple seconds before changing into the desired font. This is lazy font loading. Yeah. So what we're doing, Learner says, is it similar to how Discord changes from placeholders to user avatars? I'm not sure, Learner. Could you elaborate, please? Could you share a little bit more about that? Because I'm not sure. From placeholder, I guess when you load a server. Okay. Yes, I think I know what you mean. When you load a Discord server or a website, some kind of social media with a timeline, you might notice that there's like blank posts with a default picture and some blank text. This is to show, hey, there is some content here. Just give me a second. I'm going to fetch it from the server. This is what the browser's saying. The browser's saying, like, give me a second to go fetch it from the server. And the server is, for example, in this case, FreeCodeCamp's image server. When you first open the app on 3G, yes, exactly. So for connections that aren't as fast as the ones we may take for granted in some places of the world, we need to consider that not everybody is using a computer, using a wired connection, and have a very fast connection. I think I repeated myself, but you know what I mean. That was a bit of a detour, friends. Let's check our code. Oh, see, I lost my hero element. My bad. When I reloaded to show the thing, my bad. Hero. Close our header. Format document. Check our code. Looks good. Pat. See, this is why I wanted to go right from the beginning. Great. So now that we've got our image loaded up, we need an H1 element with the class set to hero title. And notice the repetition of the name here. This is so that when we're writing our CSS, we're saying like, okay, this is the hero, this is the image inside the hero, this is the title inside the hero. Because of course there could be more than one title. Not more than one H1 though. Remember, semantic HTML. Set the text to our new curriculum. I'm going to put that in all caps because I'm lazy. And below that, a P element with the class set to hero subtitle. And the content of that P, I made a mistake. H1. So there's our H1, and here's our paragraph. And inside our paragraph, we're going to have this: our efforts to restructure our curriculum with a more project-based focus. Now you might notice, hold on, what's going on here? I just see a blank thing. Remember, that's the image. If we scroll below that, there's our subtitle, their title and subtitle. Looks good. Pat. Let's keep going. Our image currently takes up a lot of space. To better see what you're working on, add a width attribute to the image element with a value 400. You'll remove this later when you have worked on the CSS. So yeah, we can tell the image, hey, I want you to be this wide directly to tell it how much space it should take up. Learner's saying, when do we type HTML in all caps versus text transform uppercase sometime? Yeah, I don't know. What I would recommend, Learner, as always, consistency. So if you can do it one way, you can type it in all caps. You can also use CSS to tell your text, hey, I want you to be in all caps. Regardless of what you do, be consistent. So if you're going to do it one way, do it the same way across your entire page. I don't know if there's an accessibility consideration. I will say this. I do know of people who struggle to read all caps. So myself, when in doubt, I tend to not use all caps. Might notice, by the way, no unit. I believe this defaults to pixels. So great, our code passes. Pat. Cool. You might see this pop up. So the bootcamp is free. We're using FreeCodeCamp's materials, which are also free. If you want to, you can donate $5 a month. Or you can go and ask me later. You can come back later and do it. Everything is chill. So after our header element, we're going to create a div with a class set to author. Close that div. And within that div, we're going to have a P element with the class set to author name. See, we're doing that thing again where we're having classes that are related to each other. And give it the text by free code camp. Wrap the free code camp portion in an A element, A, with the ref sent to freecodecamp.org. So we're going to have a little link there. Close that A element. And the target of that A element will be set to blank. Do you remember what that does? What the target blank does? Do speak up in the chat if you do. Great. Below this P element, we'll add a second P element with the class thank you learner. Target equals blank opens the link in a new tab or window. Absolutely. Thank you. Mitch says window. Absolutely. Thank you very much. So class set to publish on dash date. Look at y'all knowing. New window. Exactly. Thank you very much. Y'all are so much better at this than I am. March. So the publish date will be set, have the text March 7th, 2019. Close our P. And there we go. Oh, so this is now our author section. So that's all done. Let's check our code. It looks good. Pat, pat. Keep going. Ooh, now we're going to learn some stuff about how the web interconnects. So the refer HTTP header. Oh. Sorry, just a quick question from Mitch. By the way, Ramon, I see people sending you messages all the time that don't show up to the YouTube chat on my screen. How do they do that? Yeah, sorry, Mitch, I should have been clear. This stream is going out to YouTube, but also to mine and Jess's Twitch channels, just so that we can reach more folks doing the boot camp. So that's why sometimes you see a different icon. For example, you see the YouTube icon here in yours, and Learners, for example, has the Twitch icon. So that's how that works. Sorry, I should have been clear. So let's talk about telling a website where you're coming from when you click a link. So when we open a browser, what we're doing is sending it a request, a website in our browser. What our browser is doing is sending an HTTP request. We covered that very briefly. Remember with forms, we had that post and get stuff. What the browser is doing is essentially going with a get request saying like, hey, can you please send me some HTML, some CSS, some images, some fonts, etc., etc., etc. What we're doing when we send that request is we're also sending the server some information about ourselves. And this is called an HTTP header. This is some info about me. Now, this might tell the server, for example, hey, what kind of browser am I using? Am I using Google Chrome? Am I using Firefox? Am I using Safari? Am I using Safari Mobile? Am I on a small device? But also, this here is the refer. That's to say where you came from. This information can be used in analytics to track how many users from your page visit freecodecamp.org. This is an example of how we use this referrer header. So what we're doing when we add a referrer, when we're adding referrers in our HTTP headers, we're telling the website, the target website, where we came from. And this is used by a lot of analytics software like Google Analytics and some others to be able to know how it is that users behave on the website. Now, of course, not everyone's a fan of this thing, and they would like to, for example, not tell people where they're coming from. So what you can do in our A element is have a rel property that says no refer. And I believe, just going from context here of the name no refer, we'll verify this in a second, that we're telling it, hey, don't tell Free Code Camp where we came from, please. Let me verify that. I'm going to open up MDN and go into no refer. Yeah. Oh, yeah, here we go. The no refer keyword for the rel attribute instructs the browser when navigating to the target resource to omit or leave out the referrer header and otherwise leak no referrer information. So what we're telling here is like, hey, go to Free Code Camp when you link to this, but please don't tell them where we came from. So that's what we're doing here. Check our code. Looks good. Cut. And move on to the next challenge. Ooh, now we're going to build some social icons. Amazing. So inside our author, below our author element, we're going to create a new div with the class social icons. Learner says the headers can also be checked from the DevTools main and network tabs. Thanks, Learner. So we're going to have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 links. So I'm going to be lazy. I'm just going to go href, leave that blank. And then I'm going to copy paste this 4 more times. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So the first one is going to link to Free Code Camp's Facebook. The next one is going to link to their Twitter. If I did that right. There we go. Inside the quote marks, please. The next one is going to link to Free Code Camp's Instagram. Next one links to their LinkedIn. And the final one links to their YouTube channel. Now, I've added these links, but they're not showing up in my content. That's because we've created links, but they don't have any text. So what I bet we're going to be doing is adding that text or perhaps icons. I don't know. Next. So let's check our code. Great. Pat. Let's keep going. So within each of our A elements, we'll have an I element to give them the following classes. So the first I element will have the class Fab or Font Awesome Facebook F. The second one will have Fab FA Twitter. Third one will be Fab FA Instagram, Fab FA LinkedIn, and Fab FA YouTube. So I'm going to be a little bit lazy and write up I with the class set to be Fab, just for now. Hear me out. Close our I. Let's copy paste this because this Fab I notice is being reused. And here. So let's go again. FA Facebook F. So that's FA Facebook F. There's our Facebook F. FA LinkedIn. Nope, that's Twitter. There's the bird. FA Instagram. The little camera. FA LinkedIn in. There's our LinkedIn. And finally, FA YouTube. Cool. There's our 5 social icons. Got a question from the learner. Was the tag I earlier used for non-semantic italics, but now icons? Well, let's find out. Cesium says, I sure miss that bird. Me too. It's idiomatic text that is set off from the normal text for some reason, such as italic text or icon. So the I isn't actually for italic, but for idiomatic text. Technical terms, taxonomical designation, amongst others. So yeah, we can use it by default. If we put in text, it'll be italicized. But when we use, we can also use it for icons, especially with Font Awesome. So cool. Now our links are clickable. If I'm going to try one of them, I'll go with YouTube. So there's the Free Code Camp YouTube channel. Amazing. Great. So let's check our code. Looks good. Pat. Keep going. So below our heading element, we're going to create a new section element with the class set to text. I'm going to close that section. And within that, we'll create a P element class set to be first paragraph with the following text. Soon the Free Code Camp curriculum will be 100% project-driven learning, set up a series of coding challenges, and so on and so forth. Cool. And see, it's already starting to take shape, which is quite exciting. Pass, pat, pat, keep going. Great. We're going to have another P element with this text below that. So I'm just going to quickly paste that in. Boom. Is that done? It done. Pat, pat. Look how fast that was. We're going to have another one. P element at the end of your text element and given the following text. So P. There we go. Look at that. Amazing. Pat, pat. I love it when I don't have to write. So after the 3 elements, we'll create a block quote element. This is new. And as the name might imply, this is a block that contains a quote in it. The class is going to be set to quote. And within that, add an HR element, a P element with a class set to quote. I didn't read correctly. And then add a second HR element. HR, by the way, is short for horizontal rule, as in a line. So HR. Then we've got a P element with the class set to be quote. Close that P. And then another HR. Great. And within, give the quote element the text, the entire curriculum should be a series of projects. Perfect. That's done. Let's take a look at how it looks. So notice a couple things. First of all, the block quote by default is a little, is it centered? No, it's just got a margin. Then there's our horizontal rule at the top. There's our text. And below that, another horizontal rule. That's just sort of to give it some style to look like a quote. But I'm sure there's going to be more styling we'll do. Pat, pat. Great. Another block quote element. Below our block quote, we'll add another P element with this text. Here, did I paste that correctly? Yep. No more walls of explanatory text. I do appreciate not having big walls of text or tests. Amazing. Cool. Passes. Pat, pat. Let's keep going. We'll add another paragraph. Look at us. We're practically writing this whole thing and give it the following text. We've practically got this article almost written by now. Pat, pat. I know I'm copy pasting, but I'm still going to feel good about it. Add one final P element. Don't mind if I do. And give it the following text. So all the way down here. Whoopsie daisy, went too fast. P element with this text. Amazing. Should be done. Looks good. Does it pass? Pat, pat. Let's keep going. Great. So below our text section, we're going to create a new section. Give it a class of text. Whoopsie. Text. And also the class text with images. All right. Section. So we've got an article element with a class set to be brief history article, and an aside element with a class set to be image wrapper. Now that's a couple new elements we're seeing. I don't know if we've seen articles yet. I don't think we've seen aside yet. So you know what I'm going to do, friends? I'm going to look these up real quick. Right now they're empty because there's no content. I still want to look these up. So let's look up article. So the article HTML element represents a self-contained composition in a document, which is intended to be independently distributable or reusable. Examples include a forum post, a magazine, a newspaper article, a blog entry, a product card, a user-submitted comment, an interactive widget or gadget, or any other independent item of content. I think the word here is independent. So the text with images is independent. Sorry. The brief history is independent from its context. This is semantically independent. So that when we want to use software to extract independent pieces of software, like say, DuckDuckGo will extract parts of a recipe or perhaps a blurb for the, what's it called? The result text, the item description. It can use these semantic elements to look that up. So that's article. What about aside? Let's look up aside real quick. Cool. So the aside HTML element represents is the word here, a portion of a document whose content is only indirectly related to the document's main content. Asides are frequently presented as sidebars or call-out boxes, and the name fits that pretty well. If we go back here, we can see our aside is representing the image wrapper, which is indirectly associated to the article itself. Hope that makes sense. Will probably make more sense as we go through this exercise. But for now, we submit our code, pat, we keep going. Great. So within our article, we're going to have an h3 with a class set to list title, h3, and the text of brief history. Below that, we'll create a p element with the text of the curriculum. What a hard word to spell. And we'll create a UL element with the class lists, multiple UL, multiple lists. So there's our brief history of the curriculum. And there's our empty list. Doesn't show up, but it should be fine. Yep, pat. Look at that, we're 24% of the way done already. So within our UL element, we'll create 6 LI elements. We'll add an H4 element with a class set to list subtitle and a P element to each of your LI elements. Got a question here. So even though the article class is semantically independent, the first header is an H3. Yes, because the article itself is semantically independent from the rest of it. We still have the cohesion of the entire magazine document, meaning it can only have one major title, which is H1. I hope that makes sense. I hope I understood the question as well. No problem. So we'll have an H4 element within each LI with a class set to list subtitle and a P element to each of your LI elements. And then we'll have H4 here, the H4 content here, and the P content for here on the right. So what I'm going to do first is create those 6 LI elements. Do they have classes? I already forgot. They do not. The H4 has a class set to list subtitle. Great. So LI, and each of those has an H4 with a class set to list dash subtitle. Close that H4, and a P element inside each of those. Let me just confirm that I got that right. H4 list subtitle, P element in each of my LIs. And I want 6, right? Yes, I do. 6 LIs. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to be lazy, friends. Copy and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. And now I'm going to play a little bit of copy paste. So copy. Oh, wait. This goes in the H4. So boom. And this goes in the LI. In the P inside the LI. Boom. Should already start showing up. Ooh, that looks fancy. I like it. I wish I could have these side by side. Maybe I'll be lazy and just copy the whole thing and then separate it there. Cut, paste, remove the colon. Great. Then V3. Boom. Cut. Oh, that's too much. I think I did an undo by accident. Cut, paste, delete the colon. There we go. Then there's V4. Look at how long this is. Look at all this great work that Free Code Camp has done. It's pretty amazing. Cut, delete, paste. remove that extra space. 2 more. Copy. Paste. Cut, delete, delete, paste. 1 more, and then we can finish up this list. Paste, cut, delete, delete, and paste. And there we go. Whew! That's a lot of copying and pasting. If you get any errors with this, you might want to go back and just make sure that there's no spaces and that there's no colon as well. Great, that looks good. Check our code and passes. Pat, pat. Great. So in our aside element, we're going to have 2 images. There we go. Image, block, quote. With the class set to image quote. Friends, I'm sorry. I just realized somebody started mowing the lawn outside. So I'm going to quickly close the door so that it's less loud. It'll be 2 seconds. Sorry about that. Hope that's better. Hope it wasn't too. Oop, now I hit my microphone. Great. Where were we? Yes, we were. We've got our block quote with the class set to image quote, and then 1 more image below that. And right now, remember, images are self-closing. That's why I'm not closing them. And the block quote looks good. Does the code pass? It does. Pat, pat. Let's keep going. So within our image wrapper element, we're going to give our first element a source of this, and an alt image of this, a class of image1, a loading set to lazy, a width of 600, and a height of 400. Whew! Okay, so one at a time. Source of this image. And it should already appear. Let's have a look. Cool. Alt image of the quote machine project. Great. A class of image1, image dash 1. Loading set to be lazy. We're going to talk about this in a minute. Width set to 600. And the height set to 400. Now remember, friends, this means, is that correct? Kind of stretched a little. This means that we are telling it to be 600 by 400 pixels in display. Now let's look at this loading for a second. The reason we're using this lazy loading, and now we can see it much better utilized. When we go into our site here, I'm scared of refreshing, so I'm not going to do that. I'm sorry. When we go into our website, believe it or not, if we didn't have the loading lazy, the image down below would have already loaded. But we don't need to load it yet because we haven't scrolled down there. We might not even scroll down there. So that's unnecessary downloading or fetching of that image. By putting loading lazy, you can't see it, but right now, if we had loaded this website freshly, that website wouldn't have, that image wouldn't have loaded yet. But until we scroll down far enough to need it, then the browser goes like, oh, gotta go get it, and then loads the image. So this is the power of loading lazy, and this is why we use it. Hope everything else looks good. Let's check our code. Pat. Let's keep going. So we're going to do the same for the second image. So Tomo 1985 says Schrodinger's image. I was not ready for an existential crisis, but well, here we are. It is 2023 after all. Whew. Okay. So our source of our image is this here. An alt set to be image of calculator project. Just going to copy and paste. And similarly, loading set to be lazy. In fact, go down. The image exists and doesn't exist. No cats were harmed. Thank goodness. Cool. We can see our image already showed up and it loaded lazily, but it's kind of big. So we want to set its width to be 400 and the height to also be 400. Cool. So that's a square image. Great. We should be done. It does not. Oh, I forgot the class. Ramon, look at you not. Look at you not reading all of the instructions. There we go. Image 2. These hints are really helpful. There we go. Pat. Amazing. Within our source, the third image element is going to have a survey form background, so we'll do that. So src set to be this one here. Alt for people working on code. Loading set to lazy. Class set to image-3. Width set to be 600, please. And height set to be 400. Whew, okay. There we go. Amazing. Does that work? It does. Pat. How we doing? 30% of the way. We might have to go overtime a little bit today. I really want to make sure that we get through as much of this project as possible. Cool. So we're going to do the same HR thing as before. HR, P element, and another HR. Got my thingy here. Class is set to quote in our P element. And the text is this here. Millions of people who are learning to go through free code camp will have an even better resource to help them learn these fundamentals. Love that. And there you go. There's our quote. Pat. We're just doing great. Now we start with CSS. Great. So first we're going to normalize it by using this star to reset, including the before and after pseudo selector. So comma, star, colon, before. And if you don't remember these are the secret elements that we can style, but they're called pseudo elements. They appear before and after every element in our HTML. So padding is going to be 0, margin is going to be 0, and box sizing is going to be set to border box. The reason we're doing this resetting, by the way, is just to make sure that, we are in charge of our entire padding and margin destiny. And it looks consistent across browsers. So now all of that default styling that the browser was giving our HTML elements is completely gone, which is great. Or at least the default padding and margin, I should say. Cool. Pat. We're going to write more CSS. Great. So our HTML selector is going to have a font size property set to 62.5%. What a specific number. This will set the default font size of your web page to be 10 pixels. The browser's default is 16. This will make it easier for you to work it with rem units later, such as 2 rem will be 20 pixels. Now, why we couldn't set this to be 10 pixels, I'm not sure, but I'm sure there's a reason. Cool. So now everything looks a little smaller, which is good. It's got a bit more of a magazine-y feeling to it. But for now, pat. Oh, Mitch says 62.5% is 5/8. That'll do it. Thanks, Mitch. It is not 10 to 10 in the morning here. It is too early for me to be doing math like that. Cool. In our body, we're going to set the font family. We're going to use our Google font that we downloaded. Baskerville with a fallback of serif. The color property is going to be set to linen. Oh, goodness. That's not readable right now. However, The background color property is going to be set to RGB, 20 red, 30 green, 40 blue. And now it's readable again. It's much more readable again. Cool. So this is where things get interesting. If I remember correctly, the Google font will be loaded lazily. So while it's loading, we can have serif show up as a fallback. So this is why on some articles you'll see that it shows a different font for just a moment. Cool. So now all of our text, font, color, and background is set, so we can check our code. Passes. Pat pat. Let's keep going. So hit an H1 selector. That's for our one and only title. The font family will change to be Anton with a fallback of sans serif. Serif? I think serif is correct. And there we can see our new curriculum looks very striking, very cool. Great. So that's done. Hey, pat pat. Now we'll create a selector for all of our H2s, H3, H4, I cannot type for the life of me today, H6, and all of our other headers will have a font family set to Railway with a fallback of sans serif. Where did we have that? We had an H3 somewhere, didn't we? Oh yeah, there it is. A brief history. So that's shown in this new font, Railway. Cesium! I've heard that the reason you shouldn't set the font in pixels is for accessibility. That way it's possible for some browsers to set an extra large default font size. Thank you, Cesium. That actually makes a lot of sense. Learn something new every day. Amazing. Pat, pat. Let's keep going. Cool. So our A selector, so all of our links are going to have a text decoration set to none. Now, if y'all remember, this means that it's going to remove the underlines. You might have seen it's kind of hard to read them, but no worries because we are going to set the color to be linen. Now, I hope we'll fix this because right now the problem is that by removing the underlines, I can't tell by looking at it which ones are links and which ones are text. But I'm sure we're going to fix that later on. So let's check our code. Pat, pat. Let's keep going. Oh, it's time to start doing the grid. So CSS Grid offers a two-dimensional grid-based layout, allowing you to center items horizontally and vertically while still retaining control to do things like overlap elements. We'll begin by creating a main selector and giving it a display property set to grid. Now, this is starting to sound a little familiar. Centering stuff vertically? I feel like I've heard this before. Oh, we got here. Also, pixels are independent on the device. Old laptop screen has bigger pixels than a new one, for example. Very fair point. Thank you very much. Cool. Let me just take a look at that again. Remove that. It looks a little bit more spaced out. If I make that a grid again, let me watch the changes. Cool. So stuff is getting a little bit more smushed together, I'm noticing. But it is a grid now. We still need to set up what the layout of that grid will look like. And a grid is, as the name implies, kind of like a waffle, you know, a set of squares next to each other in rows and columns. Again, sounding kind of familiar. Cool. Code passes. Pat, pat. Let's keep going. So now we can style the layout of our grid. Oh, look at here. Free code camp after my own heart. CSS Grid is similar to Flexbox in that it has the special priorities for both the parent and child elements. So here's the way I like to decide whether I want to use a Flexbox or a grid. Flexbox tends to be used for layouts that are one-dimensional, either a row or a column. Now, if a row or column is too long, yes, it will go into a next row or column. Grid, on the other hand, gives me more control over a very specifically two-dimensional layout, horizontal and vertical. We'll get into how this looks in just a moment. So in this case, our grid's main element, the parent element, is the main element. We're going to set its content to have a 3-column layout by adding a grid template columns property. So grid template columns property. Now we're going to tell them how wide each column should be. Let's first put in these values and then go cover them. So we've got one FR, 94 REM, and one FR. Now notice how this changes. Now each column is one FR, 94 REM, and one FR. But let's take a look at what happened here. We can see one big chunk here, one chunk here. Oh, hold on. Oh, sorry. One chunk here, right? Okay, let me take a look at the CSS real quick. The HTML, pardon me. Ah, yes. So we got a main with 3 sections. One is the heading, which we see here on the left. The next one is, scroll down, scroll down. The next section is the text, which we see here in the middle. And the third one, the third child of our main element, is this one here, the text with images, which starts with this brief history. So we've already laid out our grid to have 3 columns. But what do the widths mean? The first one we might recognize, 94 REM. REM we've used before. It means that the text in the middle is going to be 94 REM wide relative to the font size of the website. But what about FR? FR stands for fraction. So it's going to be 1 fraction for this, 1/3 for this, then 94 REM for this, and then another third of the width for this. So if we had these set to be all 1 FR, let's just do this just for fun. Each of these would be 1 FR wide, 1 fraction wide. And we can kind of see that here. We've got 1 fraction set here, 1 fraction set here, 1 fraction set here. Now, the keen-eyed among you might notice, hold on a minute, this isn't equal space. Nuh-uh. That's because our images are set to be 400 or 600 pixels wide. So what CSS Grid will do is automatically try its best to accommodate that. If it doesn't manage, it's going to spill out beyond the width of the website. Season says, it's very cool how we just say 3 columns and it automatically spreads out the content across them. It is indeed very cool. So that's why we're telling here 94 REM to be like, no, you be assertively wide text. There we go. Great, so that's how that works. We set up our columns. Let's check our code. Looks good. Pat. Let's keep going a little bit. How are we doing? 41%. Let's do a couple more. I know we're getting to the top of the hour. So we're going to use the min-max function to make your columns responsive of any device. So min-max, as the name might imply, takes 2 arguments. The first being the minimum value and the second being the maximum. These values could be a length, a percentage, FR, or even a keyword like min content. That is max content, the maximum that the content could accommodate. So we're going to wrap each of our already defined values in here in a min-max function. So let's do that. Min-max, and using each value as the second argument. So the maximum is going to be 1 FR for this first column. The minimum should be 2 REM. So this column can be minimum 2 REM or up until 1 fraction. This here, min-max, is going to be at least the minimum amount needed to fit the content, and maximum 94 REM. And finally, our third column, our text with images, is going to be at least 2 REM and at most 1 fraction. Well, I don't know about you, friends, but we're getting there. Let's take a look at kind of what's going on. Here we're saying, hey, listen, You can be at least 2 REM or at most 1 fraction. This one says, hey, you can be at least minimum needed to fit the content or at most 94 REM. And you can be at least 2 REM and at most a fraction. Which kind of leads the images to spill over and it not to be quite that well distributed. But I'm sure we're going to fix that in just a moment. Pat, pat. So at the top of the hour, I still want to leave this looking not horrific, not like a mess. It doesn't look bad. It just looks a little messy. So to add space between the rows in the grid layout, we're going to use the row gap property. We're going to give it a space of 3 REM. So now each row is going to have, each element, pardon me, is going to have a space of 3 REM between them, which I can't quite see yet, but I would imagine that's because we don't have a lot of space to work with yet. So pat for now, and hopefully, well, hello. Hopefully we'll get that working. So our magazine is going to have 3 primary sections. We already set the overall layout of the main rule, but you can adjust placement in the child rules as well. One option is the grid column property, which is shorthand for grid column start and grid column end. The grid column property tells the grid item which grid line to start and end at. So let's see what that means. So our heading is going to have the grid column property set to be 2 out of 3. Now this looks a little bit better. What we're telling here is the heading element to start at grid line 2, so at the second line of the grid, and end at the third line of the grid. So it's kind of stretching out. In fact, let's use some background color to illustrate this. Right? So it's going down 2 elements, 2 it's going down to be 2 portions of 2 sections of the grid wide. Sorry, that was really hard to say. 2 sections of the grid wide. So it's looking a little better, but I'm sure we're going to lay it out a little even better itself. So let's check our code. Looks good. Pat, pat. Let's keep going. Cool. So if you're just tuning in, just so you know, you might see this pop-up appear when you're doing this boot camp. While you're doing this boot camp. So this boot camp is free. We're using Free Code Camp's materials in collaboration with them, which is also free. If you want to, you can give them $5 a month. You can tell it to ask me later. I'm doing this on my personal account. This is more of a teaching account, so I'm not doing it here. Well, maybe ask me later. Oh, Cesium says, I think we aren't seeing the row gap because it's all currently in one row. That makes sense. So it's like space between each row, not between each column. Thanks, Cesium. Great. So we're going to do the same for the text selector. We're going to give it that grid column property of 2 out of 3. And look at that. Now it's starting at ending at the second row, and that looks significantly better. And now we can see that spacing between rows. Thank you, Cesium. Great. Pat. Let's keep going. So for a little bit more control, we can have a grid within a grid. Woohoo. So inside our heading, we're going to display a grid. Nothing changes yet, pat. And that's because we haven't laid out our grid yet. And now we can style the content of the heading with CSS grid. The repeat functions is used to repeat a value rather than writing it manually. And this is super helpful for grid layouts. For example, if we wanted to have a grid with a layout with grid template layouts to have 20 repeat 200 pixels. Let me try that again. If we wanted to have 20 columns that are each 200 pixels wide, we can use this property for grid template columns. So we're saying, hey, make me 20 columns, each of which is 200 pixels wide. So what we can do here for our heading is have the grid template columns have a repeating layout of 2 columns, each of which is one fraction wide. So there's our heading and there's our author, which looks great. We're getting there. Put a semicolon here. Completed. Pat, pat. I think I'll do one more and then we'll go out and have some rest, have some fun, take it easy. Cool. We're going to give our heading a row gap of 1.5 rem, which we can see is starting to space things out a little bit, which is lovely. Great. Pat, pat. Let's keep going. So our grid column property determines which columns an element starts and ends at. There may be times where you're unsure of how many columns your grid will have, but you want an element to stop at the last column. So if we want our element to stop at the last column, we can use -1 for the end column. So we'll use a hero selector and set its grid column property to be 1. So to start at the first column and end at the end column. Now this looks a lot smoother. And look at this, we've already got a clean column-based layout going. Amazing. Let's check our code. It passes. Pat, pat. Oh my goodness, I did go over time. I'm sorry, friends. It was just so much fun. We'll stop here for now. So tomorrow, we'll pick this up once again at step 42. Let's take a step back. So, scroll down a little bit. Here we go. So we are at step 41. And tomorrow, we're hopefully going to finish off this exercise. A little bit of a resource I want to share. Folks, feel free to ask questions if you have any. Otherwise, I'm just chilling here. CSS Grid Guide. So it turns out that, hold up. I'm going to give you 2 guides. So it turns out that CSS Tricks also has a CSS Grid Guide. So you can go and check that out. I'm going to copy and paste that. Amazing. And I'll send you one from MDN as well. It's good to have a couple of things because, some learning resources work better for some folks, some works better for others. So it's good to have a balance. And I really like what Cesium said here. Grid took me a while to learn, but in my opinion, it really makes layouts easier once you get used to it. And that is an extremely fair assessment. It is a lot more daunting, I find, than Flexbox, but once you get used to it, the world's your oyster. All right. Well, if there are no questions, let me catch you up a little bit about how the rest of this week looks. So here's our schedule. We're looking at it now on the Bad Website Club website. Just sent the link once again in here. Remember, all of these sessions have links to YouTube videos that are recorded, so you can come back and watch them at any time. For example, if you missed yesterday's a guest session with Miguel, don't worry, it's right there free to watch. Today is our last session of today. So we're taking a little bit of a breather today, but tomorrow we'll be back at the same time on the 25th at 7 UTC to do part 2 of our CS Grid learning experience. So, well, friends, if there are no further questions, I'm just going to say thank you so much for joining in. As always, it's a joy. I wish you all the most wonderful rest of your day. Hope you're all taking it easy and having a good time learning. And see you tomorrow. Bye for now.